I'll give everybody a minute or two to join us. Right, guys, we're live. I think we should start.
Okay.
Cool. So good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's expert discussion on the legal and commercial implication of AI and AI explainability. I'm Itai, and I'm happy to be your host. As AI continues to transform industries, understanding how and why AI systems make decisions is more important than ever. We have a fascinating agenda ahead, covering key topics such as the new AI standard ISO 42001 and the commercial impact of AI products, followed by a live Q&A session. Let's get started. I'm pleased to hand things over to Professor Shlomit Yaniski Ravid, who will open today's session. Shlomit Yaniski Ravid is a professor of law, focusing on the legal and ethical aspects of AI systems. She is a visiting professor at Fordham Law School since 2012, part of the Yale Law School ISP since 2011. She is also the head of Advanced Legal Studies Program of Commercial Law, High Tech and Technology, Ono Academic College. Published extensively on these fields, including on FRT, and she was recently identified as the foremost thinker on AI and copyright in the American Copyright Society annual event by Judge Catherine Forrest. Professor Yaniski Ravid, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you, Ty. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ty, for the generous introduction. Welcome, everyone, to today's discussion on AI explainability, legal and commercial implications. We're really happy to have this event. I think it's super important. Special thanks to Dror, Ty, and of course, Sir Tony Porter for our great collaboration in bringing this conference from theory to practice, like we like to say in the academia. I appreciate the participants of all the speakers, panelists, and the audience, and I'm thankful for your time and commitment to exploring this critical topic. Thank you for joining us today. As AI is transforming each and every day, and I think everyone can feel it, and it's kind of like revolutionizing every field of our life. And its impact grows with each passing day. As this system becomes integral to decision-making, and understanding the inner working is essential for building trust and ensuring accountability. The challenges we are all aware of is that the AI models often operate as a black box, where even scientists who develop them may not fully understand how or why the AI reaches to a particular conclusion. Explainability is essential for AI models to provide a human understanding and explanation of how algorithms arrive to the decision. In the context of facial recognition, for example, this involves clarifying how the algorithm, the AI system, decides whether faces of two images are identical or different. Explainability is also important in regulation, where the field that I'm coming from. And we have the example of NIST guidelines, and recently the ISO 42001 standard that we will discuss. Like it's a new thing and worth getting to know this standard that everyone will have, like in Europe and hopefully also in the United States, although I'm a little bit hesitating about if the United States is going to adopt that. I think these standards mandate that any organization using AI must be able to explain how its algorithm reaches their conclusion. This step is critical for improving trust among users, policymakers, and the public, while addressing fairness and legal compliance. Is ISO 42001 the answer? We'll discuss this issue, and I think I'll leave it now as an open question. So explainability goes beyond a technical necessity. It forms the foundation of transparency, fairness, and ethical AI practices. By providing clear explanation, we can address biases and ensure that technology align with evolving legal standards. The collaboration between industry policymakers and academia is crucial for advancing AI, while academia is one of my targets in my academic life, in practical life, while academia pushes the boundaries with critical and theoretical approaches, as well as innovative research, industry takes this insight into practical real-world solutions. Today, we will discuss from the lens of different industries and point of views, can AI foster trust? Our discussion will uncover both challenges and strategies for creating explainable, responsible AI system. We will also address key questions about balancing commercial demands with government regulations, maintaining system transparency, and of course, the most important, building public trust, improving the systems and building public trust. So it is my pleasure to introduce the first speaker, my colleague, Dr. Hanan Mandel, who has been a faculty member for many years at Ono Academic College and Bar-Ilan University. He is a distinguished researcher in the field of digital system for dispute resolution and AI in courts. He also serves as the editor of the journal Democratic Culture. So Hanan, the floor is yours, and I wish everyone a great and fruitful and thought-provoking discussion. I'm looking forward to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Shlomit, and I am happy to be here with you. And well, I'll start jumping into the question. I have to confess, when I prepared this slide, I asked a Copilot, which is embedded in Microsoft Office, formerly known Microsoft Office, that uses OpenAI and ChatGPT resources in order to create the image that is here at the slide. And he produced this image. I wondered where it came from. And I searched for it, and I found that it was 6 years ago. It was published on the online edition of New Equipment Digest, which is a digest that deals also with AI, without the network scheme that you see at the middle of the thing. So I asked, I wondered, how did he get this image? So I started to do a research. I found out that the image of the wandering person in the left is in fact Getty Images image of a businessman thinking, a thinking businessman. And how did it get to be here? So I researched a little more and found that a graphic producer named Deverim Bulent Erdogan, who is from Turkey and living in Germany, was publishing works that he used with Getty Images. And one of the work that he created was called AI, no AI explainability. And this was the image. The AI then took the image of the thinking businessman that you see now on the right and put it on the left with an image of the robot that we see, and then later added for me, only for my request, the network image in the middle. All the fuss that I have to go through in order to find why did he put and generate this image for me is the reason for explainable AI. Most, as Shlomit told, most of the AI systems were built in black box mode, meaning they learn a lot, they have a database they use, but we don't know, we can't know what is the reason that they gave us the output that they gave. We don't have an explain for this. And it seems to me that explainability AI is needed in order to bridge the gap that is now between humans and robots, between humans and AI. And why do we need explainability AI, which is starting to develop, as you saw in the last a few years? We see the fruits of the research done in the recent month with various systems that emerge. And the reasons, the way to do explainability AI, I am not a technical person, so I won't get into it. There are model agnostic methods like LIME and SHAPE, which help to simulate the way that the AI was thinking and to give us the answer, why did he get to the same question? By the way, model-specific methods that were used before, like we had regular algorithmic systems, are more easy to get explained. But I'm not a technical person. I want to talk about the need for explainability AI. And we can talk about three things that in the literature we find that researchers are looking on XAI. One is trust. Because we know that AI errors, because we know that there are hallucinations in AI systems, we want explainability AI so we can get and understand them and eliminate those things. For instance, for my field, the use of AI in courts. So it was a famous case 2 years ago, 1.5 years, about the Roberto Mata versus Avianca case. Roberto Mata was a passenger on Avianca during the landing to JFK. The tray that was in front of him fell out and injured his knee. He hired a lawyer and they started the case. And the lawyer, Stephen A. Swartz from Levido and Oberman firm, was preparing a 10-page legal brief for Mata. In the legal brief, he added some cases supporting his claim, some citations. The citations were Martinez versus Delta Airlines, Zilberman versus Korean Airlines, and of course was written the important case of Vankesi versus China Southern Airlines. None of these cases exist. None of these cases exist. Unfortunately, for Swartz and his firm, the judge who was ruling the case was searching for the cases and didn't find it. So he wrote a verdict which fined Swartz and the firm for $5,000 because the court says you can use AI systems. It's not something that you shouldn't do, but you have to be able to track down why the answers were this and to check their accuracy. And this is the first reason that we need explainability AI. If we want to trust, and more important decisions in health, in finance, in other places, in the law, in the legal cases, are done by AI, we need to eliminate the errors and the hallucinations, and explainability AI usually help us to track down these kinds of errors. That's the first thing. Second one is accountability and compliance. And that's regarding also the regulation that you mentioned before. We want that systems that persons are using, whether they're AI, any digital system, is fair, is anti-biased. We have several cases, very known cases, about bias that was done by AI. By the way, most of the bias is like what is doing, like the human is doing, but it's we don't want it in digital systems. And the last reason which is very important from a legal point of view. Is there a right to be explained? Some scholars are claiming there is a legal right for a person to be explained what is done and what is said to him. It's very important, it's interesting, because we don't seem to have this right speaking about in the history. But with the development of AI, this kind of right, of a new digital right, is starting to emerge. And Explainable AI is very important for this right. If and when it will be stated as a legal right, then Explainable AI will be the system that can help us maintain this right and serve it. That's my view. And thank you very much for your time. And I am happy to present the next speaker, Tony Porter, which is a former surveillance camera commissioner at the UK Home Office, which is an important position regarding digital cases. Tony, with his extensive expertise in regulatory frameworks and explainability standards, will provide us with valuable insights grounded in real-world regulatory changes and practical solutions. Thank you, Tony, for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Hanan, and welcome everybody. It's great to be invited back to Fordham Law again. You're doing great work on promoting AI, regulation, understanding, and education. As Hanan said, I'm here. I'm going to explain in perhaps a little bit more detail about this new ISO standard, the 42001. It is a global first AI quality management system. And I'm going to talk about how it defines and incorporates some core issues. One of the most important is explainability, and look at it as a key requirement within that standard. I'm also going to touch on the implications for AI developers, businesses, and regulators. But today, I actually agree with Hanan. The key payload is going to be the panel of true experts that we have lined up that will be able to relate all of these issues that you've heard into the practical on-the-ground issues. If I may, before I go into the detail, just a little bit about my pedigree. As Hanan said, I was 7 years a surveillance commissioner appointed by the Home Secretary in the UK. During that time, I was an expert witness at the Court of Appeal on the use of facial recognition technology. And flowing from that, I drafted the first regulatory guidance on police use of the software, which was then taken by UK policing lock, stock and barrel, and they have adopted all the recommendations, the philosophies. And I think it's important to understand really perhaps where I'm coming from. And during my move from that, I've worked with a range of standards bodies, one for the BSI, British Standards in the UK, advising ISO on emerging AI standards, and also co-authored the British standard on facial recognition and ethics, which was extremely useful. And to the Americans in the audience, I had the great privilege and pleasure advising the White House on their recent project on facial recognition for law enforcement at federal level, and also number 10, UK government on the same issue. So this was to chime really with the rapidity of the move into facial recognition and broader AI. And then in the last 4 years, I'm delighted to have been brought into Corsight as a Chief Privacy Officer. Corsight is a global facial recognition software development company. I have been working with some world-class data scientists and technicians, and the delicious irony doesn't pass me by that as a technical delinquent, I have had to rely on human explainability from these ace scientists to explain to me what they're doing. And in turn and exchange, I've been able to point out the surveillance art, perhaps a little bit about regulation and guidance, and how to make software that complies and chimes with all of this. So you can see a slide in front of you. This was the beginning of what was known as the EU Trustworthy AI Framework. My colleagues at Corsight got overly familiar with this 4 years ago. It didn't mean a right lot then, but we tried to work through the principles. It was only when the ISO standard emerged that we started to see all these components reflected in the standard. And what it does, it's a framework to develop a quality approach to developing this software. And what it does internally, it coordinates the data guys, policy, regulatory, development, product, and even the sales guys, because they need to know and explain what they're doing and what they're selling. So it's been quite an interesting run through, but for lack of time, I'm not going to go through the whole wagon wheel. You can inevitably read it yourself. But what I will touch on is let's look at robustness and reliability. If the software that's developed that forms part of the algorithm is, how should we say, a little bit dodgy. And how might it be dodgy? Well, the data sets may be fake, they may be untrustworthy, they may have been acquired in an unlawful way, they may have not been developed with due cognizance to bias, nobody cares where they came from. And you imagine, let's say, a police commander trying to account for his community as to a decision is made when frankly he simply cannot. Now, this is where the whole essence of the trustworthy framework and the ISO standard started to emerge, and you can start to see the importance of it. Touching on privacy, in the US, of course, you've got 20 odd states now emerging with their own privacy laws. But how do they manage purpose limitation, data purpose, accuracy, confidentiality? And if they don't know, or if the purchaser doesn't know, then you've really got a problem in terms of complying with emerging and nascent law. So the one last comment I think I'll make on this is this framework, this standard, is now the foundation for what have been termed as the harmonized standards within the EU AI Act. And within that act, you hit a cliff edge. And the cliff edge effectively means if your software is not compliant, if it's high risk and not compliant, then you're going to have a problem and you're not going to be able to comply. You're actually not going to be able to sell in the EU or to EU citizens that are using it. And I think one for Shlomit here, I think there's a really interesting webinar to be had on the divergence between regions and nationalities on potential AI oversight and what that might mean and how global companies or actors in the arena start to manage that, because it is quite an interesting issue. So let me talk about what this has meant for the boys and girls at Corsight. We've just been audited. We believe we will be the first global facial recognition company to acquire this seminal certificate. But it isn't without pain. It's taken us over 15 months. It's required the coordination of every element of the company, which is a startup. So you can begin to imagine the complexity of that. We've had to draft somewhere in the region of 20 or 30 new policies, impact assessments, risk policies, data, life cycle, human in the loop. Why? Why have we done that? We've done that so people can understand what it is they're buying and how the decisions are made and how they can account to their stakeholders. Just moving quickly on, not the next slide, but moving quickly on. What are the drivers then for people to use this kind of software? Well, I would say that the societal drivers, so brand reputation, stakeholder capitalism. It's not just the company that are involved in this, it's the people that buy, or it's the community that are impacted upon it. What's the company purpose? We've been able to align Matan, who's VPRD, you'll hear him later, with our salespeople. There is a nexus now that is urgent and an imperative, because we all need to know what it is we're making and what the decision is. It's fascinating stuff. Another driver is regulatory. I've mentioned privacy, but let's talk about cyber and AI oversight bodies. NIST in the US, UK AI and LATAM and ASEAN have got their own oversight bodies. So we need to track that. How do you do that? You do that with 42001 because you're forced to. And of course, then the implications of this. In America, you saw Rite Aid. They were hit with swinging fines from the Federal Trade Commissioner. I think Matan may touch on that, so I won't steal his thunder. The standard enables the streamlining of processes. We've got a management committee now that seeks to support our stakeholders, our stakeholder capitalists. And you can see that we have, I think, probably one of the catch-alls for me is that we've been doing some great work with law enforcement in the UK. And a component of our success with that has been able to sit down and let them know we are more concerned about their communities than arguably they are. And when we take the front step and explain that bias, transparency, openness, reliability is the driver behind our engine, then we start to get a lot more positive feedback from our clients. And then finally, and this is focused on our American friends, Mall of America is a great client of ours. We worked ad nauseum with Mall of America, their general counsel and their operators data to explain our posture on lawful and transparent facial recognition or AI. And they have launched in the last few months. They're doing a great job. And we have been humbled by A, how much they've listened, but B, how it's taken it to the next level. So I'll be closing down in shortly now. You'll see from this slide here, that's right, there's a sad face and a happy face. The sad face is, of course, when we get explainability wrong, when you can't explain it, when nobody knows why it's popped up. And I think Hanan made an excellent example there with the image that he produced. Why do we succeed and when do we fail? Well, who cares? Do you know? Well, who cares? Of course, people care. And whatever the position under President Trump in terms of AI and oversight, I'm absolutely certain that that posture will prevail. Then the smiley face at the bottom, no guesses there. That's when the converse applies, when it gets it right. So let's recap on explainable AI. It counts as black box. It helps users by improving understanding. It supports the implementation of the social right to explanation. And chapeau to Hanan referencing, is that a legal right? Well, we don't know. Or is it? It's an interesting question. And then, of course, we can explain the smiley face and the sad face. Where is your software? Can you do that? And is it important? Well, 42001 says it's important, but actually the social contract also makes sure it's important. Conclusion, it's tough to do, but you have to start now. It's going to be law in the EU, and I know NIST are looking at walkways through to the 42001. It's a global standard, but it will be the bedrock of the legislation and the feasibility of companies working in the EU. We've seen it open new markets, so there's a commercial approach. And we also seen it avoid regulatory traps such as the public sector equality duty, where it does put onus on operators to enable, on developers to enable the operators to understand the nuances within the system. That's me. I think you've got a great lineup. You're going to listen to the real deal, people dealing with this in a variety of verticals. I'm looking forward to listening to it. So I hope that's been okay for you. If I may hand over now to Shlomit and Hanan to carry on the management of the process. Goodbye.
So thank you, sir, Tony Porter. It's so important and so many questions that I have to address. Maybe we'll skip some time at the end. So now we're turning to our panel discussions. I'm pleased to introduce our esteemed panelists from leading AI companies. Each brings a unique, practical perspective on incorporating explainability and other ethical and legal challenges into their industry. And I think it's really important to see like different lenses in different industry, how they address the same issues. We look forward to hearing from you. Your companies are addressing these challenges really nicely. I mean, we had this prior discussion and I thought it's really fascinating. So with us today is Matan Noga from Corsight AI, specializing in facial recognition technology, FRT. Daphne Tapia from ImiSight and expert in imaging. Pini Usha from Buffers AI, focusing on inventory optimization. And from my field, Alex Zilberman from Chamelio, providing a legal perspective on analyzing contracts. So we'll start with Daphne and Daphne, I think. So can you just speak about your industry, what are you doing, and just explain a little bit, and how do you incorporating AI, and what are the challenges you are facing in regard to AI and the new standards?
Okay. Thank you very much, Shlomit, for the introduction and for having us here. So I'm Daphne. I'm the director of sales at ImiSight. We are an Israeli company. We are a subsidiary of Rafael Advanced Defense System. And we specialize in the integration of different sensors. We work with satellite imagery, drone imagery, CCTV cameras, and using artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithm, we extract information. We detect objects, changes, and anomalies. We work globally. We specialize in certain fields. The first one, maybe where we are very strong and present, is in Israel. We have a very important project with the Israeli Land Authority. And we work in the field of land encroachment, meaning that we will scan the country several times a week or a month to detect illegal activities, illegal construction, to detect violation of agricultural fields. This is one example. Another example would be a project we have in Africa. We're working with an European NGO, which has an African Development Fund for this project. And in Africa, we work in protected spaces, parks, to monitor illegal hunting. So the project, again, is to scan several times a week, a month, the animals, and to count how many giraffe, elephant are left. So this is how we use AI on a daily basis at ImiSight. And yeah, I think we do, yeah, that's it for now.
This is super interesting, and you work in different, like in Europe and in the United States and Israel, so it's really impressive. So what does it mean, explainability in your field, like in your industry? How do you incorporate that, or how, I mean, does it have any meaning, or are you working on that? So I'm curious.
Yeah, we do work on that. At ImiSight, explainability means that we should be able to reply to two different questions. The first question is, why did we detect a specific object or a change? And the second question is, why did the AI model make certain errors? And how can it help ImiSight improve and refine its algorithm? So to the first question, why did we detect a specific object? Again, we analyze satellite drone imagery to extract meaningful features such as shape, color, texture, and spatial patterns. And in order to do that, we will train the model on a very diverse range of data sets that are either available online on precise libraries that we use, or for better accuracy, we will have proprietary data sets on which to train the model. But we will always consider the surroundings of the object and terrain. So for instance, if we detect a boat in the middle of the desert, it's likely a false positive. And finally, we also use a lot temporal analysis to see over time if the changes make sense or not. So for instance, if there is a one-time acquisition, an image, and we see a patch of barren land, okay, but if in the future we see that it becomes a construction site in progress, then all the elements we detected, they are not errors, they are part of new developments. So we use the context to understand why we detect specific objects. And there are in the field of geo AI, so this is the integration of artificial intelligence and geography and geospatial analytics. There are tools to understand why errors are made. And one of these tools, for instance, in the analytics of images, is to blur certain part of the image and to see if it has an impact on the model. So if the accuracy score all of a sudden decreased because a specific part was blurred, then it means that this area was very important for the detection. So this is all these kind of tools that we use to understand why we detect something and where was the error made.
I like the way that it's not just the AI which becomes explainable, but also the way you explain that. So it becomes much more explainable. So thank you. And so to send to Pini, I mean, I'm really curious what is your industry, what you're doing, and how do you incorporate transparency and explainability?
So hi everyone, I'm Pini, I'm from Buffers.ai. And we are inventory optimization SaaS, software as a service. We work in the field of mainly in retails, but not only, also in production. We have clients all over the world, clients like big clients like Toshiba, Procter & Gamble, but also in the fashion industry, clients like H&M, the global H&M, that's the third biggest retail company in the world. And we are doing managing all the inventory of such big clients. And we meet the AI and the AI explainability when we are coming to doing the forecast. So the traditional ways to do a forecast, there are great statistical models, regression models, like, AI is working mainly on regressions, linear regression, exponential regression, smoothing, and so on. But it comes to a problem when you are trying to do a forecast for a new product, meaning a product that you do not have history about. So you do not have statistical data about it, and you need to predict its behavior for the future, for planning. You have to do that. That's crucial for your business. When we are talking of businesses like fashions, they change all the store catalog. Like, if I'm talking about like Zara, they are changing between 9 to 12 times a year the whole store, except for the basics and the evergreen. But the fashion departments are changing 12 times a year. Sometimes it's just changing the SKU, but it's a different problem. So they face a problem that new products arriving to the stores and they do not know how to anticipate it. The way that we are solving it, we are searching for similar products in their whole catalog, and to finding a similar product, it's an AI task that it's based on classifiers, and this is where the explainability meets us. So if I'm telling you that this product is similar to this product, I can assume how this new product is going to behave, but I have to explain why this is similar. The similarity can come from text, from the description that you have of the product, or it can come from an image. An image, it comes that we know how to extract attributes or classifiers, that's the technical terms of it, of each image. So I can take a picture of any one of you and I can extract many attributes like the color, the size, the shape, women, men, washable, not washable. I can estimate price, length, age, gender, and so on. And based on this attribute, I can search the catalog and find the similar. Now, after I find the similar, I need to do the explainability. And this is the part that mainly our user mainly do not use it, but it's mainly used by our development team because we need to improve our process. So if we find something that is similar, I have to see the weight that each classifier received. So if I found this shirt that is blue and I found another shirt that is, let's say, black, I have to give it a weight compared to its V type or style or fabric or so on. So we have, for each one of them, we have a report that gives the weights and the score for each one of the classifiers that got us to the similar product.
Yeah, that's really interesting how these different industries are using that. So Alex, yeah, I mean, checking contracts with AI.
Yeah, Shlomit, it's much more exciting than it sounds. So I'll give you a very short background about us and what we do, and I'll address how and when we use explainability in our solution. It's quite core to our solution, actually. So just as a way of introduction, nice to meet you all, and thank you for having us, of course. Chamelio is the legal intelligence platform that's exclusively built for in-house legal teams. What it means is that unlike other examples of legal tech solutions that are aimed for litigation, e-discovery, and other things that you probably read more on the news, that like Hanan brought in the beginning, that an AI made a mistake and everybody died. No, I'm kidding. Not everybody were to blame that they didn't check the facts. It's a bit different when dealing with in-house challenges. They're not smaller, but they're definitely of a different nature. And what we do in Chamelio is we transform the way that in-house legal teams operate through an AI agent that intimately learns and harnesses the legal knowledge stored in the vast repositories of contracts, policies, compliance documents, corporate records, regulatory findings, and other business critical documents. And that legal AI agent is then used to conduct real life use cases that company needs. So one of the main applications would be contract review and negotiations. So once they train their own legal AI agent with a quick onboarding, it's now ready to deploy right inside of Word to actually read the documents that they need and understand what's going on there. And the way that we are doing it, and just as a very significant basis of our solution, we're constantly grounding what we're trying to do with the data of the company. So we're not using just off-the-shelf LLMs to provide answers to questions. We rather use AI techniques and LLMs to make a smart comparison between the data that the company uses. And in every place that we provide a suggestion or we answer a question we spoke, we will always, and this is the place where explainability comes in and the trust building is done, we always have a reference to the area in the contract, to the area from your original data, and the level of our assurance of the answer that we provide. And that's how we deliver the results. And just one more example that I think might be interesting that we do is we found out that when you review a contract for your customer, you'll have a lot of rules in his what's called a playbook. There will be always a case when you have clauses and places in the contract that you didn't handle before. So let's say you're now working with Walmart and you have your own contract, but apparently Walmart will insist on using their paper, and you haven't read that paper before. And there will be lots of places there which you actually didn't prepare for when you trained your legal AI agent. And that's where, instead of making things up, and coming up with best practice, which is an LLM made up answer, what we do is when we detect that area, we'd actually flag it to the professional for him to review it himself. No AI, human. We use the AI to put the human in the center and tell him, now you do it. Once he does it, we'll try to learn from it. We'll have a reference that the next time that will happen, we'll tell him you did something similar in the Walmart case. Here is something you can do also here with Amazon or whatever. And that's the way that we operate. And that's the way, as two examples, how we incorporate explainability into our solution built in.
I see. Yeah, I mean, a lot to think about that and a lot of things to develop. And I think at the end of the day, I'm thinking about how AI will replace many of us and many rules but for now, and I think explainability is really a big step. So Matan, yeah, I mean, facial recognition technology, I always call it in my articles, yeah, the technology that we love to hate. I think it's kind of like the black sheep of the AI regulation. I mean, okay, I mean, this is that level and the other level, but facial recognition is public. So, I mean, I think you're facing the most, the biggest challenge to actually get the legitimate, be legitimate, and I think explainability is part of this process. So, yeah, love to hear about that.
Well, so I'll start by saying this is why we are front runner when it comes to explainability and the new ISO. So. But let me dial back and first present the company, then we'll talk about how explainable AI affects us. Our company specializes in face recognition in video for real-world scenarios. Face recognition can basically be divided into two main categories. You've got the kiosks unlocking phones or logging into your financial services. This is what we call the voluntary recognition, which frankly, it's quite easy and practically it's becoming a commodity these days. The other category is systems that can handle CCTV footage in the wild, involuntary. You need to handle sunglasses, masks, changes in light, blurriness, tough angles, all of these at the same time. There are about 10 vendors out there that can reliably implement this kind of technology. Some of these vendors are Chinese and usually unpopular outside of China, while the other few face recognition vendors serve nearly every law enforcement agency, airports, banks, and malls in the West. The most classic use case for these technologies is watch list alerting. For example, one of our clients, as Tony mentioned, Mall of America, they maintain a list of banned individuals such as shoplifters, vandals, sex offenders. And when someone on the watch list approaches the gate to the mall, the system recognizes that person and sends an event which appears on the security guard's console. And this leads to a prevention of their entry. Another use case is finding missing children. In this scenario, a parent can provide an image of their lost child to the mall security. The child's face is then searched live across the mall's cameras, resulting in a quick identification and location of where the child is right now or where he was last seen. Police forces, for instance, they use face recognition to identify individuals with arrest warrants or for post-event forensic investigations. These involve building a complete picture of who was where and when across dozens of hours of footage rapidly. This saves a lot of man hours and enables investigators to crack cases that, frankly, otherwise would be nearly impossible. So, recognizing persons of interest in a crowd, in a wild dynamic environment, changing variables with a very large databases and doing all of that in real time, it requires a strong, dedicated, and accurate technology. And handling this interlace of challenges reliably, this is Corsight's specialty.
Wow. So yeah, so with all these kind of like good intention to get like a legitimate transparency, explainability AI system, I would like to switch to the differences between Europe and the United States. So especially with the new administration, with the Trump presidency and Elon Musk and all the shift, I would say, I mean, this analyze of all the shift of all the giants and the Silicon Valley companies, which were very much into kind of like liberal and like when years ago, and then they switch into be the kind of like the one that everyone accused for not keeping the regulation, invading privacy, and suddenly there was like a huge shift within these industries, and we can see it now with Elon Musk and others, and supporting Trump administration, and a huge impact on waiving and canceling and avoiding any regulation, and which is a bit different from Biden, the executive order and other things he would try to promote. So what do you think about this shift from tendency to regulate the United States into into like non-regulation, and how do you deal with that and with this huge gap from Europe, which is kind of like having regulation on each and every step of AI systems. So
I actually, well, can we get back to that? Because I actually have a lot to say about explainability, and I don't think we covered it yet
Go
for
back.
Corsight.
Okay.
So I think I'll start with that, and then we'll talk about the US and Europe, UK. So starting back a bit, as I mentioned, our system is deployed in very challenging scenarios. It affects humans' lives directly, obviously, and it plays an integral part in decision making. So I'd like to consider the following. What about using face recognition identification results in a court of law as evidence? Before explainability, what you get is basically two images side by side and an indication of how similar those images are. And that's it. Basically, it's like bringing an expert witness to court that cannot answer any questions. Now, not everyone is a forensic analyst or an AI enthusiast. And when you consider the challenging scenarios that technology is used in, frankly, we've reached a point where our system is correct, but in many cases, it can be very hard for our users to actually tell if this is the same person just by looking at the images. So the system is performing magic that we do not fully understand. So the question that comes to mind is, how can we explain and break down what the system is doing? Explainability is building a bridge between our intelligence and artificial intelligence. And today, novel research that we're doing alongside building the right platforms to share information, pave the way towards true explainability and transparency. We can demonstrate on the face image itself the parts that the AI was looking at. It's like seeing the person from the neural network's perspective. We can visually highlight the parts of the face between the two images that were most similar. The system can find lookalikes of a suspect and demonstrate how and why the system differentiates between those cases and the one at question, like a lineup. This is the essence of explainability for us. By tapping into what previously was considered a black box and presenting it in a human way, we can better understand and justify what the system is doing. And this leads me to my next point, which is building trust. Let's look at two very recent cases and the implications of doing something right or doing it in the wrong way. A large UK police force is using Corsight's solution, and they had just published results for over 20 operations deployed outdoors in the crowd, in the wild, streets, malls, events, and so on. 500,000 people's faces were analyzed in real time using our system. With high accuracy, which led to arrests of wanted individuals and near zero false identifications, this kind of publicity and transparency and openness is a very strong way to build trust with both the police force and the community, assuring them that only the bad guys are being identified. On the contrary, let's take a look at Rite Aid. This is a US pharmacy chain which recently had to terminate their face recognition usage due to lack of compliance and transparency. With high false positive match rates, irregular monitoring and testing, lack of proper employee training, lack of transparency about its performance and accuracy, the Federal Trade Commission there had to order for a permanent injunction of their face recognition technology program. And I'd like to finish with a bit of a more personal note. I think that for many researchers, developers, and engineers out there, having to deal with compliance, building trust, new ISOs, emerging standards, I think they often ask themselves, is this going to slow down my work? And I have to say that we've learned it's actually the other way around. By building these tools, changing our way of thinking, by allowing ourselves to have a dialogue with our AI, we actually learn and gain much more. This invokes change, which in turn pushes the science technology much further. It's enabling us to deliver solutions that are fair, they're accurate, they're accountable, transparent, and explainable.
Yeah, no, I agree with your last point. I know I'm meeting with the Congress like every year about these issues of ethical and legal standards about AI. And I mean, the one thing we were begging is to have some regulation, to have some federal standard or something, because it will make things and also investments in the companies much easier. So I agree with you. And I think Corsight received the ISO 42001 license already. So I think it's the first facial recognition company to receive that. So
Yeah, well, it's days away. There's a the certification itself, but yes, we're definitely at the front there. Let's get back to US and Europe.
Yeah. I mean, let's hear Daphne. I know. I think you're originally from France.
Yeah, it's hard to hide when I speak, but I'm trying my best. Yeah.
No, are you working? I mean, professionally, are you still working in Europe, like your company and
yeah, so
Europe, as far as I understand.
yeah, so we're working a lot in Europe, Africa, the US. And yeah, I think from my personal experience, I would say that in Europe, the most important thing now starts to be explainability, bias mitigation, and user consent for AI-driven decisions. Whereas in the US, it's a bit more flexible, but we must follow sector-specific AI laws. So for instance, in the field of environmental monitoring in the USA, there is the National Environmental Policy Act stating that AI systems that are used to detect deforestation, climate change monitoring must ensure that the outputs are scientifically validated. So this is one example. Another example, at ImiSight, we work in the field of homeland security, especially for border monitoring. And in this case, all the AI detection must be validated by a human. So there are a few specific laws per vertical that we need to know, to take into consideration. And so to work both in Europe and in the US, we need to be flexible and to know the rules.
Yeah, and Pini, do you think that like if you work in both places, so the fact that you're working with Europe, it means like you're improving your system in a way that even if you sell to the United States, so that this regulation is already embedded in your projects. Would you agree with that, or do you like sell differently to both places?
And I think that in my field, the regulation is less strong because we are building for forecasting. It's not like in the face recognition that you have to expand. You have many other problems. For our challenge is just to explain our client and to support the forecast. So I don't think the regulation is going to be very strong on what we are doing with it.
But the UX, I mean, they want you to kind of like keep the data, being transparent, and all these things that like.
Yeah, I mean, we have to comply with the GDPR, like I said, with H&M, so that's Europe. In the stores in Europe, but we have stores in Latin America, we're in the US, so there we have other things to comply. But in the terms of the AI explainability, I mean, for us, we didn't see any request from the market or any interest. It was more for our usage because we wanted to improve the forecasting, and this is why we invested so much in the explainability. And of course, when you're analyzing tons of data, you cannot run it in explainability mode because it takes a lot of time. Every day we are analyzing millions of SKUs, but when you want to do a drill down, then we allow to have all the weights for each classifier, so we can analyze and do a drill down to understand why the forecast give the result. And once we learn its internal process, that again, as I said, usually we use it, not the client, but we take a lot of it, and it's a mandatory. Like I think Matan said, it's a really great way for us to learn and improve.
Yeah, Matan. So, I mean, facial recognition, maybe it's so differently. Although many states regulate their own FRT, or anti-FRT or anti-biometrics regulation. But still, I mean, there are gaps.
I think in Europe and the UK, both government, from what we see, commercial clients generally tend to prioritize privacy and fair use. Recently, it's becoming a bit more volatile, though. I think you mentioned it before. We had some recent announcements from the Trump administration that they are going to prioritize security and safety. In Europe, a very strong approach was developed on how to use AI, which is the EU AI Act. And we see that in other parts of the world, these concerns are almost non-existent. In Latin America, for example, where violent crime is widespread, public opinion actually tends to prioritize personal safety over privacy. So I think it's also important to look at the differences between various government and commercial usages. From our experience, police and intelligence agencies, they are less constrained by regulations than commercial entities. In highly regulated industries like banks or casinos, every system must adhere to strict privacy, data protection, transparency, and many, many other standards. In less regulated sectors such as retail, the primary focus is ROI. When a retailer sees that live face recognition clearly reduces shoplifting and employee fraud, it's a no-brainer.
I see. Let's turn to another aspect of seeing different angles in your industries. So how do you balance the needs of commercial markets with government regulation? I mean, yeah, definitely. Let's start with you. I mean, there are like, you want to to commercialize your product and to sell as much as you can, but on the other hand, you have these restrictions. So
Yeah, so it's true. And at ImiSight, we try to maximize as much as possible public-private partnerships. So we can bring the AI, the economical aspect, the economical growth, and the public partner will be more into the regulation, and he will teach us everything we need to know, especially in different countries. So he will be the expert. And we do offer as well trainings and transparency reports where we explain all the process, all the thinking behind the AI detection, and where we make sure we align with the regulation.
And Pini?
As I said, we do not work with governments, so I don't think this applies for it, so I don't have much to say about it.
Yeah. So Alex,
Thank you for asking. So we also don't work directly with governments, rather only with commercial departments of companies. I will say that the explainability part in our product is built in. I mean, you have to give a clear reference to where you're getting your answer from and what it's based on. And in terms of the difference between Europe and the United States, so there are many different requirements that I think are more built in to our product structure that also are tied quite nicely to the explainability. And it's the fact that if you sell to a customer that's in Europe, when they have questions and they need to review their contract, and they're based out of Europe, the law that applies to them is different than the one that applies to our customer in the United States. And then when you apply this type of judgment, you need to explain on which case law you've determined your suggestions on. And that's why it's also comes into account, and that's why we also show the reference for the relevant case law if was used in each of those countries. Another thing that is, I think, more broad, not relevant to explainability, is that EU customers are much more sensitive to data controllership and everything around that, and they insist on their data to be stored in a specific place versus US that's a different place, but that's less about explainability, just the nature of these type of customers and their governance needs.
yeah. I have a question for Matan and for others. Like, I think we cannot isolate explainability from other legal challenges and ethical challenges such as privacy and accountability. So, I mean, So, I mean, I would love to hear your voice about these challenges, like what about privacy and with its different aspects, and what about, I mean, who is accountable for full decision of your AI system that you are commercializing?
Well, I want to dial back to the slide that Tony showed earlier. I think the first thing, there's always a human in the loop, right? We provide the recommendations, and then we help with the decision making. As to privacy, I mean, if you go beyond explainability is really depicting what the system was thinking, why it was doing what it was doing. And privacy is protecting information, protecting identities, and
yeah, but you know, when you conclude, you get in conclusion, and you get these photos from somewhere.
Yeah.
So did you receive this photo with consent?
So it really varies from usage to usage. This is why we provide our customers with some legal support, understanding what can they do, what is legal, what is rightful, what is ethical, even beyond legal. And our system really provides this wide range of this configuration. Who can see the images? Who has access to it? For how long is it stored in the system? If you add to that, top-notch security, which I also think it's inseparable part of a system you can trust, I think you get a very rounded picture of having a explainable AI alongside protecting our privacy and keeping it secure.
Yeah, just like explainability may be part of, like, we got this photo with consent from so-and-so, and it's part of like explaining how the system works.
Mm-hmm.
And accountability.
Well, accountability, as I started my question, there's always a human in the loop, right? We do not make arrests, or we do not flag customers automatically and yank them out of the store physically. There's someone who's doing that. At the end of the day, we are accountable for what the system is recommending for, but it is the actual customer, whether it's an agency or retailer, they're responsible for their actions using our system's recommendations.
Yeah. Other opinions, Pini? Who is accountable for fault result in the inventory?
But yeah, so we are in the same case. So we are doing the suggestion, and we call it suggestion wherever we can to protect ourselves, because it's a forecast, and we can't look in all dimension of building the forecast. So again, even for us, most of the decisions are made automatically, but the big ones, you need a man in the middle that click the enter and accept the suggestions. And we call it like that. It's not like 100% or automated process.
Daphne or Alex?
It's the same on our side. Everything is done automatically, but for critical detections, there will always be a human in the loop.
Yeah. In our case, the idea is that we don't make any decision. We only give recommendations. So we are not dispensing legal advice per se. And for that matter, as an example, just to make it even more clear, if you're not a trained professional lawyer, you will probably find our current solution not as helpful as you think, because the language is a legal language, it's legalese. It's like French, but less even less clear. And the professional has to exert his professional opinion, whether to accept or reject or even modify the suggestions given by the AI. And I do assume that at some time in the future, our system and probably other system will achieve a level of autonomy, and it will be only a matter of decision to allow the agent, in case the threshold is high enough, to continue and execute the full, the full application end to end, shoot him, as they say. But for now, it's only an assisted solution, so you can't shoot him. Just see where he is where his face is on the map.
Okay, thank you. It's really fascinating. So maybe we'll turn to Q&A. Mr. Porter, do you want to ask a question, or anyone from the audience? You can also write in the chat, I guess, your questions, and we can ask the panelists.
Yeah, if I may, and thank you, Shlomit. I've been fascinated by the variety of the verticals, the areas that our panel come from. I've spoken about the discipline in developing AI and how it sits with the data scientists and research leads like Matan, to the legal and the oversight, and to other areas. I've spoken about the requirement to understand the risks and the documentation, and where every element has a component piece. The question I have is, if that does not take place in your organization currently, do you see that there is an imperative to introduce that? And who in your organization would be the lead for that? Does that make sense, Shlomit?
Yeah.
Yeah. So to anybody really, it's anybody that fancies tackling that.
I guess I'll start, Tony. Due to the ISO 42001, this is something that we've building for a long time now. We've taken it very seriously. And as to who is leading it, or who is doing it, I think my immediate, but like it's everyone basically, right? And it depends on what. I don't need necessarily the lead researcher responsible for creating the accurate networks that translate images to embeddings to document our security protocols, right? It really depends who is doing what, but at the end, it's my responsibility. It's the chief privacy officer's responsibility, the CEO's responsibility. And I think this is this is very important. You don't just give it to some, sorry for like a clerk to manage everything. It's up to the leadership of the company to endorse it, and really spread the word around and have everyone working together on this. So yeah, that's my answer.
Thanks, Matan. And it's obviously you and I know each other, so I mean it's and we haven't practiced or prepared that. You just jumped in. I'd just be curious to know from outside our zone, so maybe Alex or Pina or Daphne, do you see that this is something that you will be taking back and saying, hey, we've just had a bit of an education here, or actually we don't want to touch that? What's your perspective at this stage?
100%, this is something we will take back with us at ImiSight. I think this webinar as well was an accelerator for us to handle this important question. Today we start growing, we start developing, and there is the question of trust that we mentioned it, and it comes back a lot. And creating reports or explanation really about how was a detection made, etc., is really important to renew a contract and to build trust. So at ImiSight, again, we're a small team. I believe that the question will be handled by everybody, but the lead will probably be the product member, especially because explanation, a text summary for each detection we made, or the accuracy score, etc., needs to come with some explanation that needs to be part of the product. So it can be a little report, a little note next to each detection we do. And I think, yeah, for us, it will probably be within the product team.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
For us, I can say, Tony, is that I think for a company like us and the panelists here, like we are like the second tier of the AI. I don't believe none of us building the model. We are using models. We are self-taking models for Hugging Face. We are using for certain products the GPT model, the LLM GPT models. and we are using the embeddings to find the results. So such a request, such a question, usually for tier 2, and we consider ourselves as tier 2, not tier 1, we are not in charge of it. I mean, like the tier 1 should answer it and should have compliance with all of it. We are like just using it, wrap it, and serve it to our clients. We are not building the model. So it's less relevant for us, and I don't see in the future that we will have an officer that will comply with it, or at least in our business.
Okay, I mean, it's fascinating, and thank you for that, Pina. There are, within the standard itself, it's not just developers or producers that the EU will seek for evidence of compliance here. Although for Matan, he, as Shlomit quite rightly pointed out, it's not everybody's favorite baby, and it has had a very difficult birth, and it's a very challenging piece of software, which is exactly why we decided to bite the bullet and demonstrate our credentials. But the level at which tier it goes to, I think it's a very interesting comment, and I might take that away from me and have a little look about the responsibility on, as you phrase it, second tier, third tier. And Shlomit, if I may, just one last, I'm conscious I'm hijacking your Q&A here. I'm curious from Alex's perspective, because I have operated in and around the legal world, if Alex is still with us. Trust, confidence, ethics, legality is absolutely core to your business. Is this something that you would be looking at, or do you see a different route for the development of your AI?
Yeah, so it's absolutely imperative to build the trust and rapport with your customers to actually acquire them. If you aren't able to provide the right evidence, especially in the field of legal, it's very unlikely that they will use the software and the solution for an ongoing significant period, and they will actually adopt it, or even if to take into account the way that our system is currently being used, allow other users in the organization to rely on its advice. So you need to be able to somehow articulate in a very clear way why they can trust the result that you are showing, on one hand, and a clear visual product interaction that can help them verify that result. So it's not only about, trust me, I'm doing it the way that I should, and I use the right type of data points. It's also about showing them that if you click on a certain button, we will highlight the area in the contract which this conclusion is coming from. So the way to verify it is just by human professionals that can quickly understand if this actually means the same thing. Now, what it will do, it will create, what it does currently, it creates like a testing effect. So in the beginning, I see the user interface usage, they click those references more. And the interesting bit, Tony, is that over time, you see the number of clicks on the references goes down, because that's people. They, at some point they trust you, and then that's the time to trick them. No, I'm kidding. But I mean, you see that once you build this rapport with them, they rely. And I think that this standard and all the things that you've mentioned, you and Shlomit, this is a great way, like SOC 2 compliance and ISO 27001, all the other more, I would say, more popular, not for a good reason, standards. They're just a good way to answer the question, wait, how can I trust that this is their answer that based on something that is meaningful? Well, I'm ISO whatever compliant. Sorry, I don't remember the amount, something 4 in the beginning, right?
Something 4.
And the more people adopt it, the better it for everybody, especially for vendors, because there's nothing better that I prefer than pay a little bit or more, and then to get this out of the way. So the more it's adopted, the better for everybody. and we're now running in circles trying to explain in words and in features what something like what you mentioned, guys, can be done in an easier. This is the standard. I comply. You can check, and that's it. That's all you need.
Perfect. Alex, thank you so much. And Shlomit, sorry for a slight hijack from my side there.
I think it's super
Handing back over.
interesting and brought like a different perspective to the discussion. So I think with that, we'll wrap up, and thank you again for engaging and thought-provoking discussions, and for revealing and unfolding your trade secret in a way of your industries, and share it with us. And it was really fascinating. I think there are a lot of challenges that are still to be unfold. Even the meaning of explainability, or privacy, or transparency, or even compliance. It's kind of like things that need specific definitions, and I'm not sure it can be like one suit tailors all, and we can we'll see how these things will unfold. And so I think the future is fascinating, and we'll see what it's going to bring. So thank you so much, and I really appreciate your time and your thoughts, and sharing your great ideas with us. And I think we learned a lot. So usually say see you in court, but see you in the next conference.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
In 2 minutes, we will release the dogs.